Pentagon's review of the Fort Hood shootings is now in the hands of Defense Secretary Robert Gates. He just spoke a short time ago, and he said the U.S. military is not sufficiently prepared to prevent similar attacks in the future. There are reports as many as 8 Army officers could face discipline in all this. The Defense Secretary says vital changes need to be made throughout the military. Take a listen.
One of the core functions of leadership is assessing the performance and fitness of people honestly and openly. Failure to do so, or kicking the problem to the next unit or the next installation, may lead to damaging, if not devastating, consequences.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer is with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. Colonel, tough words, a tough conclusion in that report, and tough words from the Defense Secretary. Some of this stuff is pretty stunning that they found. What are your thoughts?
Those words are long overdue. We've had a culture for a long while now where people who do not perform adequately are kind of kicked along and shoved off and given to someone else. So I think the call for accountability is the right answer. And frankly, what he's talking about here is following the standards. It's very clear from the review that Major Hasan did not meet the basic standards of being a commissioned officer within the military. So why was he kicked along and others like him who have supposedly special skills were able to continue on? And it's just wrong, period.
We can try and answer that question, but I'm going to stop you there for a second because just to explain to our viewers, when we're talking about not meeting the basics, they said that he wasn't even in like the correct physical shape.
No, and we've talked about, I'm a reservist, I have to meet the same active duty standards, physical fitness, weight. You know, I fight with it all the time, but it's a standard. You have to meet that standard or you do not get promoted. They waived that, and worse yet, they gave him better than average evaluations, which should have really never been written because he didn't have the level of competence required to perform his skills either as a doctor or as a soldier in the U.S. Army. That's not good any way you cut it.
Yeah, they called him an adequate doctor and a poor officer. Well, what was at work here then? Why was he being kicked along the road, as we heard Mr. Gates say?
I think a lot of folks thought that he was a special case because he was a Muslim. And clearly the specialness in this case turned out to be something that was very bad for the military. We have to be considerate of people's beliefs. He went against people because he didn't like the fact people were looking at him as a Muslim. That's fine. But once you start indicating that your allegiances are with someone else, you have to be looked at. The Army just went through a big relook of this, and even before this came out today, the Army is now making everyone, to include people like me or reservists, go through special training. I got with me my certificates here of completion of anti-terrorism training and SAIDA, Subversion and Espionage Directive against the Army, which requires everyone to be more vigilant for the exact issues and the behavior of Major Hasan, which became apparent early on, and no one either was willing to look at realistically or do anything about to actually prevent the continuation of him going down the road and getting promoted.
Yeah, just one other quote I thought was pretty remarkable from the Defense Secretary. He said, we've got these 20th century processes and attitudes mostly rooted in the Cold War. Remarkable because we're 8 years past 9/11.
Well, further than that, just recently, just to show you the misuse of resources, there's a retired Lieutenant Colonel named Dullahan, who was fired from the Defense Department for allegations 30 years old about him cavorting with his Soviet counterparts during official. This guy was an actual Colin Powell advisor. I mean, what the hell's going on here? Why are we looking at 30-year-old issues when we have radicals potentially in our ranks now? It doesn't pass the common sense test, and it's not the proper use of resources. So we've really got to take a hard look at, are we still looking at a Cold War adversary, or are we able, and like we should, modernize to look at our current issues relating to the radicalization of both individuals in the ranks and people who may come into the ranks. And that's what we need to look at very carefully.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer is with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies. And again, we heard from the Defense Secretary this morning. We should get our hands on the actual report coming up about 30 minutes or so. Thanks. Good to see you.
Take care. Good to see you.